Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Um, this is our 13th episode, and I am happy to be back here. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. Come on in. I am super excited for tonight's conversation because it is definitely a personal conversation, and that is what these conversations are about. It is about our personal stories and, how we've overcome them. So I'm super excited to be here tonight. It is 7 p.m., and I am not going to be before you guys longer than 7 tonight. Um, and so I'm super excited to be here. So tonight's title is You Said You're Gonna Do Better, so why aren't you doing so? Well, the reason why I decided to talk about this topic tonight is because me myself can be I used to be very bad with like procrastination and budgeting and really just just struggling with like control and other parts of my life. And I said I was going to do better, and I would always say I'm going to do better, but I wasn't doing better, right? So I don't know how many of you are that way, but I used to be that person. There are still some things that I'm struggling with. I'm trying to get better with and do better with the procrastination. Trying not to get into a space where I'm overthinking often, because I think sometime I did get into a space where I was overthinking. And that's also something that, we say that we're going to do better as a people or a person. And sometimes those things don't happen, right? Just want to make sure the volume is up. And so today I wanted to talk about that. Like, what is it that's keeping you, that you keep saying that you're going to do better with, but you still are struggling? So again, like I told you guys, I've struggled with budgeting, I've struggled with procrastination, and I've struggled with overthinking. And these are things that I continue to work on. I continue to want to get better, and every day I'm getting better. And so when I think about what's been happening in my life, I'm like, what is it that's stopping me from doing the things that I say I'm going to do or I want to do? So when I say let's normalize, we're going to normalize some things first, right? We're going to normalize that procrastination. We're going to normalize overthinking, and we're going to normalize trouble with budgeting as a normal human behavior. Okay. So first of all, it is normal to have some of these things. However, it is not failure. So sometimes I think when we don't get to do the things that we say we're going to do at a timely manner, or the time that we feel like we should have it done, we then start to feel like, oh, I failed. Good morning, Patrice. How are you? How are you? I know you just celebrated a Zetaversary. So happy Zetaversary. Anywho, I wanted to let you guys know that sometimes the things that we struggle with, it does not always mean that you are not doing your part. It doesn't mean that you aren't trying, and it definitely does not mean that you are what do you call it? You are failing, right? So we got to understand that procrastination is basically avoidance of discomfort, right? We already know that. So fear of failure, fear of success, and it can be overwhelming. So those things can cause you to become, or to procrastinate, right? So if you're fearful of failure, right? If you're fearful of success, and if you are overwhelmed, then you will probably go into a procrastination phase or stage in your life. And I know for me, when I was trying to attain my license for my professional counselor license, I took that test so many times, y'all, and I kept failing. And if you ever have taken one of these tests, either the LCSW or LPC, LMHC, I think it's the LMFT. Those tests are so weird. And I know for me, I started taking the like the short answer test first, and then at the end, the last two times that I had taken it, I took the 200 question. So the little vignettes, it's like you can pass one area, but you might fail another one. The 200 question was different, is either pass or fail. And I failed 4 times, and I began to procrastinate to even take it again. And that was something I struggled with. I knew I needed to take it. I knew that I needed to pass it in order to be where I am today, but I was procrastinating. And I kept procrastinating because I was like, I'm scared of this. Like, I'm scared that I'm going to fail again. And it started to play in my psyche. And then I started to think that I wasn't good enough, right? And I was like, no, I got to take this test. So finally, I took the test for the last time, and I passed. And I passed with a really great score. And I believe that the reason why I passed is because I was stepping out on faith with opening up my business, which God had been telling me to do for years that I was not doing. And I felt like once I walked out on faith, he opened that door for me to finally pass this exam, right? But I definitely procrastinated for years to take this exam over, right? I think I graduated, I took the test, I failed it. I didn't take that test for another 2.5 years, right? And then I took another 2.5 years. It took me a while to get my licensure. Overthinking. Overthinking is part of anxiety. It's part of needing control. So sometimes people they say that, oh, Dr. Rose, I be overthinking. And I'm like, okay, so you have some controlling issues within yourself, right? You want to be in control. You want to make sure things are in order. Those things might come from, not having control over your life growing up. It could come from abuse, right? It can come from a lot of things where you just need to be in control. So it's hard for you to stop overthinking because you're constantly thinking that I got to fix it, or I have to do the best that I can for it. And that can cause you to overthink. Also, overthinking can also be a form of trauma due to the fact that, let's say, if you're in a relationship and someone isn't being honest, or they're cheating or something like that, or they're gaslighting you, can cause you to become anxious, right? So that when people are not being honest and they start to make you feel like you're wrong or you're overthinking, you then start to overthink because you're now anxious. Is a fear of something, right? So sometimes people who overthink, you might say, well, I never was an overthinker. But I want you to take some time and figure out why you started to overthink in the first place, right? And so for me, I know my overthinking came a little bit from my test, not being able to pass that test and seeing other people pass. And then I started thinking something was wrong with me, when in reality, I just was struggling because I'm not, one, I didn't feel I was a good test taker. And two, I started to like put myself, I started to compare myself to others. And that caused me to also have some anxiety and start to overthink. In a relationship, I was cheated on, I was lied to. And so that made me also feel a bit of anxiety and overthinking and trying to see, like, did I mess up? Did I say something wrong? Do I need to do better? Like, what is it about me that keeps causing someone to hurt me? But again, sometimes these things happen due to the trauma. And so now everything you do is overthinking, right? And then that control piece also comes from if you've been abused, right? So many of you do know my story and know that I do have some sexual abuse within my story, right? And so that also caused me to have a little bit of overthinking, of wanting to control the spaces that I was in, the things that I was doing, who I spoke to, how I moved and everything like that. That was important to me. And so it was hard for me to do things other people, the way that people wanted me to do it because I felt at some point in my life I didn't have a choice to say no. I didn't have a choice to make a decision. So therefore, as I got older, I overthought and I started to want to take control over things that sometimes I didn't need to take control over. And then I'm going to go into the poor budgeting, y'all. So poor budgeting came from poor budgeting came from me not being able to, like, feeling like I needed things to make me happy, right? And so since I had high anxiety, right, since I was a procrastinator, since certain things wasn't going right in my life, I spent money. And that's what I did. Like, I made so much money throughout me growing up and becoming a mom and a wife and all that. But it was like I still felt there were pieces of me that wasn't good enough. And so I spent money. I overspent. And I know I did. Because the amount of money that I made, in my 20s, right? In my 30s and now in my 40s, it was like I should have been more successful than I am financially. But because of my own stuff, the things that I was struggling with, I overspent. So when I started to understand these things and where they came from, guess what, y'all? I started to dig deep into my core. I started to dig deep into my core to understand that a lot of what I was dealing with was just unhealed trauma, right? It was unhealed trauma. So as much as I said I wanted to do better, I couldn't. No matter what I did, I was stuck. And I don't know about you guys. I don't know if anybody here, and if you have, please share. But I don't know if any of you have ever felt like, because of what you've gone through, because of what you have dealt with, that there were certain things in your life that you had to take control over, right? That you had to do, or you couldn't do, because that would make you not feel comfortable, right? So some people think that when they keep saying they're going to do things and it doesn't happen, they say stuff like, I'm not disciplined. I'm going to mess up anyway. I work better under pressure, right? When you're a procrastinator. Because I used to always use that term. I used to always say, girl, I do my papers at the last minute because I did it. But I'm like, but how much stress are you under when you're procrastinating, right? So where does that come from, right? I'll mess up anyway. How many people have been so down on themselves that they would say things like, oh, I'm going to mess up anyway, or they're not going to talk to me anyway, or, I'm about to get fired anyway. Like, that's not what we want. That is a sense of overthinking. You're overthinking when you start making those kinds of like comments, because you're not going to get fired if you do what you're supposed to do, right? Someone may not leave you if you learn how to communicate, right? And you have a vulnerable conversation, apologize, repent, and change from your wicked ways, right? So when we use these words, we have to understand that they're rooted in us, and they're rooted in us because we have put it in our minds that we are bad, we're not disciplined. We are bad at budgeting. We are bad at test taking, right? We work better under pressure. That's why we do things last minute. No, that is not okay. It is not how we need to be moving. If you don't know, when you're always doing things last minute, it impacts your nervous system, which also causes you to be anxious. It causes you to be angry. It causes you to be unstable. And that's how people have these different moods that goes on, Sorry. Then you have trauma responses that some of these things that I know that I went through came from, such as avoidance. I avoided taking that test, y'all, because I was like, I'm going to fail it anyway. And I'm tired of spending this $350 every time I go and take this exam just to fail it. And so I started to avoid things because it was better. It was better for me to avoid it than for me to do it, right? I was over functioning. So procrastination leads to overfunction, and that comes from also trauma, right? So sometimes, we say we're gonna, we wait to the last minute, or we're so busy, but now we're overfunctioning. Our body is working overtime. Our brains are working overtime. And then we try to figure out, why are we constantly tired, or why we have a headache, or why our stomach is always in knots. It's because we are overworking our bodies. Perfectionism. I don't know about you guys, but I became somewhat of a perfectionist, because of all the different things that was happening in my life, having all these negative thoughts in my head at times. And I found myself feeling like I got to make sure everything is all right. I have to make sure I'm involved in this. I got to make sure I do this. I got to make sure I do that. And I wanted to be perfect in everything, even down to opening my own business. I didn't feel like I could open my own business until everything was perfect. And you guys know that nothing will ever be perfect. So for me, all the different things that was happening in my life, I started using procrastination. I started to overthink, and I had poor budgeting because of all the things that was locked up in me. So I'm going to go back to that question that I asked in the beginning, just in case someone else wants to share, is you say you want to do better, so why aren't you doing it? And that's a real question, y'all. Many of us say all day that we're going to do better this year. We're going to do better this month. But why aren't you doing better? And so what I'm saying is, I know now why I wasn't doing better, but at the time I didn't really know why I wasn't doing better, right? And a lot of it comes from unhealed trauma, right? Or unidentified traumas, right? Or being in a home with someone who raised you to feel like it was okay to procrastinate, that it was okay to worry and overthink, that was okay not to budget your money, not to have a plan, right? These are things that we sometimes learn either out of survival, we learn it out of trauma, we learn it just out of fear. And so when you're thinking of the things that you want to do, write those things down, right? Don't put timelines on it. Just write those things down. And when you write them down, write out how you're going to get there and make it realistic. Because sometimes we'll say we're going to do something and we don't have any plans on how we're going to get there. It's not realistic. And then we wonder why we're not getting there. And then we're like, oh, I failed. Every time I try to do something, it fails. But have you been doing the work to actually plan out what you're trying to do? Have you prayed about it? Have you asked God, is this where I'm supposed to be in the first place? So many of us don't do the work. We don't do the work right? And so there's so many reasons why people don't move forward when they should be. And some of those reasons, like I said, it could be trauma, it could be learned behaviors, it could just be fear. But tonight, I want to know more about why is it that you say you want to do better, but why aren't you doing it, right? Why aren't you doing it? So if anybody has something to, put in there, put it in the chat. I want to read it. I want to be able to share that with others. One of the thing is, we don't struggle because we're lazy. We struggle because something feels uncomfortable, unfamiliar, and unsafe. So again, it goes back to the fact that we don't do the things that we say we're going to do sometime because it's unfamiliar, it's uncomfortable, and sometimes it's unsafe. So I was talking to a client today, and this person, is an entrepreneur, but is struggling because they have to make some decisions for their family, and if they take time from work, then their family may not get the financial help that they need, but physically, emotionally, and spiritually, they're drowning. And so they feel unsafe if they take time off, if they take care of themselves, because if they take care of themselves, then that means they can't do work that they need to do to take care of their family. So now they're in a space of, oh my gosh, I hate my job. I hate what I'm doing, but I can't stop doing it right now because if I don't do these things, my family will not be stable. And so when these things happen, it causes us to make decisions that are not always good. So we say, oh, I'm going to do better. I'm going to do better for my family. I'm going to stop working all these jobs this year. But then you get a broken furnace or your roof needs to be repaired, right? And now you can't stop working as much as you was working because now you got to replace that roof or you got to replace that furnace, right? So now it goes to the point where it's like I said I was going to do better this year, but I can't right now because of the fact that I can't do better right now because I have to make the money so I can pay for these things. So now it causes issues within your relationships, right? In your household and stuff like that. And how do you deal with that? Communication. Revamp the plan. Don't just avoid the plan, revamp the plan. And sometimes we get into a space where when things fall apart, instead of us stopping and thinking, how can I look and do this differently or do it like revamp, that people just scratch it. I'm not doing this. I'm over. I'm done. And that's not what we want to do. We want to be able to say, this isn't working right now. How can I change it? What can I do differently? Because sometimes we make all these decisions, but there's really no good plan. Because we've heard people say, oh, you gotta say what you're gonna do, or don't listen to nobody, just do what you want to do. That's not good advice. That's not good advice. If you know that you are a procrastinator, if you know that you struggle with anxiety, come and talk to a therapist. And I think that that's like one of the biggest things that you can do, especially if you know that every year you make these plans just to fail, or just for it not to go forward. And when I say fail, I'm not saying that it failed because you didn't try. I'm saying, because you tried. I'm saying it failed because you didn't try. And you didn't try because of all the other mess that's in your head, all the other negative thoughts that you have. And so now you can't move forward, or things didn't happen because you didn't even try to make those things happen, right? And so when you are struggling with these things, I really do need you guys to pick up the phone, go online, type in Psychology Today, and find you a therapist so you can start digging through some of those things. Because again, you said you want to do better, so why aren't you doing it? That is really, like I said, tonight's question is so important because I come around so many people who say, I want to do better, Dr. Rose. I want to do better, Tasha. I want to do better. But it's like, so what is the plan? How are you getting better? What are you doing differently today that you didn't do yesterday or last week or last year? What is stopping you from reaching your goals? If it's budgeting, who do you need to talk to? You might need to get you a bookkeeper like I had to do. Someone to keep you on point, someone to make sure you understand that you just can't be out here swiping, right? And so if it is fear of not having, then you got to figure out where that comes from. Why do I fear not having something? Or why do I always find myself in a store? Or why do I always find myself having to have the latest something when I know I have bills to pay? A lot of these things can be connected to our trauma. It can be connected to our sense of control. It can be connected to our sense of failure, or just a sense of fear of success. I've met people who fear success because when they were growing up, every time they did something great, somebody jealous, right? And it had to be somebody in their family, made them feel like they were just doing too much. So after a while, they became very complacent in small spaces, and that's where they stayed because they were too scared to move out of that space because of the people that they may lose by moving forward. And I'm going to tell you again, go on Psychology Today and talk to somebody. because it is so important that you understand where those negative thoughts come from that's stopping you from getting to the next page or the next stage in your life, right? So, I wanted to ask some questions, and I hope that you guys are open to answer the questions. And what is one thing you keep saying you want to improve but haven't yet? And I would love to hear someone in the chat really like talk about that. What is one thing in your life that you say you want to improve, but you haven't done that? And it's a safe space to answer those questions. But I really hope that you guys take advantage of these conversations, because this is the space where you are learning that you may not be the only person going through things or have gone through things, and either may help someone else or someone can help you. And so, like, one of the things that I know I said I want to improve on in my life that I haven't done yet is I said I want to improve on my exercising and getting fit again. I've been working on it, but I'm not consistent. So, haven't gone back to the gym, but I have been working out in my room. And it's been really good, but I know that I need to be a little bit more focused. So that's for me. I want to get fit again. Like, I have this little pudge on my belly that I really want to like take away. So I'm working on that. When do you notice this struggle showing up the most? A lot of it is just getting up in the morning, or when I'm home, when I get out of work, I'm exhausted. So I don't work out, but I need to do better. What emotion attached to it? Fear, stress, pressure, or doubt? Sometimes it's just stress. But I also know that working out is a stress reliever, right? So when I do find the energy to do it either in the morning or after work, I do feel much better. So I do know that I have to understand that, yes, sometimes I'm tired, I'm stressed or whatever, but just working out and actually moving forward to the next step is going to help me stay consistent in my fitness journey. And so I know that for sure. What story are you telling yourself that keeps you stuck? I'm gonna do it tomorrow. That is one of the stories. I'm gonna do it tomorrow. One night ain't gonna hurt, and then one night turns into a week, and then a week turns into a month, and then before you know it, you haven't been to the gym in 6 months. That was me. And then, if you were consistent for 30 days, how would your life look different? Well, one, I think I would have more energy. Two, I do believe that my body would be more toned. And three, I think that it would just help me feel better about myself. So any one of you can answer. Anyone can, leave a comment. If you have a question, please ask the question. It would be so important to hear from people talk about some of the things that they're struggling with, that habits that they want to get out of, but they keep finding themselves in that habit. Many of us have these habits that we are struggling to get out of because, one, we could be doing these habits for so long, right? You 30, 40, 50 years old, 60 years old, 70 years old, it's going to be hard for you to break a habit. It's kind of like when you're addicted to cigarettes. Some people can stop a habit cold turkey, but sometimes it takes time. So when you know that you might be struggling with certain things, it may not happen overnight where you say, I gotta stop procrastinating, right? It might be an opportunity for you to say, okay, I got a paper to write if you're in school, or you're writing a grant or something like that. Okay, I gotta do this. And then, think about something that this paper is going to allow you to do, or this grant is going to allow you to do if you get it done, right? Always have a time frame of what won't you be able to do if you don't get this done when it comes to procrastination. Like, ask yourself that question, right? When you think about it, go ahead and get it done. That will help also with procrastination. So even with me with working out, the mornings that I know that I'm exhausted, I push myself up and I just start moving as soon as I get up, right? Because if I just push myself, I'm going to do a workout. But if I keep saying it, I'm going to sit in that bed. But over time, if I continue to tell myself, get up, Tasha, and just do it when I think about it, over time, I'm not going to procrastinate on that particular thing as much. And sometimes it could just be one thing that you say you want to stop procrastinating on, or one thing that you say you want to do better on. Don't try to do better on everything. Just, take your time, because sometimes it takes time to unlearn things that you've been doing for so long. So don't put yourself in a space where you are unable to you know get these things done because you put all this pressure on you, and now you're stuck. I don't want you guys to do that to yourselves, okay? What about when it comes to other things? Like, what do you think that you should be doing in order to get better with your either procrastination or the things in your life where you feel like you need to do better, or you say you're going to do better and you haven't been doing better? Like, what are some of those things that you think that may help you? What are some skills or ideas that maybe you feel that can help you, so that you're not being stuck in these spaces of not doing what you say you're going to do? Because sometimes we get into these spaces where we say, I'm going to do this, but we don't end up doing it, and it's like, why aren't you doing what you say you're going to do? So when you think about also too, like, some barriers that keep you stuck, when you think about barriers, you might think about lack of clarity, right? So when you have ideas and different things like that, but you don't have clarity, hold on one sec. So Cindy says, breaking down big things into smaller tasks to stay consistent. That is so true. Sometimes we want to do everything at once. We want to say, I'm doing this, and boom, and now we're overwhelmed, and we don't even understand why we're overwhelmed, because you're trying to do everything at once. With starting a business, the first thing you got to do first is get an LLC, and then follow the steps from there. But sometimes people will say, I'm going to start a business, and just go out there doing stuff, and then now they're overwhelmed because things are moving too fast, and they want to do all these things, but they can't move forward because they're not in order. And now they're overwhelmed, and now they're like, oh, I can't ever do X, Y, and Z. And it's because you didn't take time to plan. So yes, breaking things down into smaller tasks so you can stay consistent. One of my smaller tasks that I do every day is I have to break down these notes. I hate doing notes, y'all. So instead of me procrastinating on the notes, I really do try to take the last few minutes of my sessions and get my notes in. And I try to do that so that I don't get backed up. But I'm still backed up right now because these last few weeks have been weakened. So I'm going to leave that there. All right, so you say do better, but define what that means. So when you do say, I want to do better with something, I think I talked about that earlier when I said, don't just say you're going to do something. Explain what you want to do. What is it that you're looking to do better with or in? Don't just say, I'm going to do better with budgeting, but don't be like clear on what it is that you want to do better in budgeting in. It might be, I'm going to do better with budgeting my money for, let's say, my spending money. Budget, like, break that down. How much money do you think that you need to spend on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis that does not put you in the red? And you want to make sure that you break those things down. When it comes to relationships, when you say, I want to do better in my relationship, what does that look like? Communication. Okay, let's break that down a little bit further. And because people say communication, but it's like, what does communication mean? First you got to figure out what is it that your partner might need from you, and what is it that you might need from your partner, right? It's so that you can communicate to your partner what you need, and you can ask your partner what they need from you. But if you don't break those things down, you're saying communication, so you think just by you saying something, oh, I'm going to the store, I'll be back, or I'm going with the girls, I'm going with the guys. That's not communication. Communication is, it might be, hey babe, do you want to do anything this weekend? If not, then me and the guys are going to go out, or they want to go out, or vice versa, right? Communication might be, hey, to your wife or your husband, it's like, hey, the kids got to go to a baseball game today. Are you going to be able to take them? If not, then I have to move my schedule around because I do have a meeting tonight. That's like communication. That's talking through things, or sitting down, breaking down what you guys need to do better with together, right? Because you can't just say, I want to work on communication, and then just think that it's supposed to be, okay, well, I said I was working on communication, I told you what I was going to do. That's not communication. Also, it says emotional avoidance. So you avoid the feeling of the feelings that are attached to a task, right? So again, that goes to the unfamiliar, the uncomfortable, and then the unsafe feeling, right? So when you have to do a task that either is going to take a lot of time, either that is unfamiliar or uncomfortable, it will cause you not to move forward with that task. And it causes you to feel overwhelmed. And the task could be anything. It could be as much as going to getting air in your tire when you know that you need air in your tire, right? It could be something like washing your laundry that's been piling up for weeks, because every time you think about it, it's like, oh my God, like, I don't want to wash these clothes. Like, it's too many. Then and now I have to fold them after, right? You start overthinking the task. And so you start avoiding the fact that I hate folding clothes. You start thinking about things that have happened to you in the past, where maybe you grew up and you had to do all the laundry by yourself. And so every time you go do laundry, you have those feelings of feeling like you're a slave, or you're the housekeeper, right? So sometimes it's important to understand what's happening when you're trying to change, from doing things that you kind of are used to doing, and they're not working for you, and you can't get unstuck. Perfectionism. You wait for the right time or the perfect plan. I have heard people talk about this thing of, I'm working on myself, or I'm doing this. I just want to make sure everything is in order. Do we not know there's no such thing as the right time? There's no such thing as the right time. And let me just break that down for you a little bit. And when I say it's no such thing as the right time, I don't mean that timing, doesn't play a big part in things. But if you constantly wait for things to always be perfect, you will never have what it is that you aspire for. Think about this. There are people that I know that waited until they were 30 to 40, like mid 30s to late 40s, to have a baby, because they said that they were waiting for the right time. They was waiting to have the most money, and blah, blah. And then they have these babies, and they still are like, it's the same thing. Like, I should have had this kid at 25. Because it's not always about the right time. It's not always about planning. It's about you just understanding that nothing is ever going to be perfect. And if you have a child, if you want to have a child, and you have a good partner to have that child with, have a child. Because it's no perfect time to have a child if you're constantly waiting, because something always is going to come up. Perfectionism also can be in relationships where someone isn't ready to do their part in a relationship because they feel like their finances might not be 100%, right? They might be still dealing with their own trauma, and they're like, okay, well, I'm just going to do everything else but work on myself because I know I'm not ready. And so what ends up happening is that people will get into half relationships, or they'll just be dating when they should really be going and getting the work, dealing with the things that's in them, so that they don't feel like they got to find the perfect wife or the perfect husband. If you go to therapy and start working on yourself, then you won't even feel like you got to be perfect in order to have a relationship. Once you know what those things are that you got to work on, you'll start working on them and towards them. So therefore, the perfectionism mindset will start to slowly go away, and you will understand that you don't have to be perfect in order to be in a healthy, happy relationship, right? Inconsistency. You rely on motivation instead of discipline. How many of us do that? You got to be motivated to get things done. I'm going to tell y'all right now, if you're always waiting to be motivated by somebody or something, you're probably not going to reach your goals. You're just probably not going to reach your goals. I say do things when you're not motivated. Do things when you know that there's some type of, there's something that you have to do. Most mom and dads are not always motivated to take their kids to the sports games and different things like that, but they have to do it. They have to be consistent with their children. Some parents are not motivated to discipline their children, but they have to, because if they don't, then the children will end up disciplining them. And remember, discipline does not mean that you have to practice corporal punishment. So I want to make sure that you guys understand that. Discipline, consequences, those run around the same, but it doesn't always mean I'm talking about corporal punishment. So please make sure you understand that. When you are disciplining a child, it does not always mean that you got to hit them, okay? Or your mate. You do not have to lay hands on people just because you don't like what they're doing or saying. I just want to make sure that people understand that. Also, some of the barriers to get stuck on things is lack of accountability. We get stuck because there's no structure and there's no follow through. So you just keep doing the same things over and over again, and then wondering why things aren't changing for you. And a lot of times we all get stuck in that space of lack of accountability. And so I can just say to you guys today, like, if you feel like you want to change but things aren't changing, sit down and figure out where you fall short or where you fell short, and take accountability of that and start over. It's always time. You can always start over. And sometimes starting over will bring you peace, because now you're gaining wisdom, you gaining more understanding, and you've created a system, or you understand like there are certain things that you just can't give up on, right? So I want you guys to think about that as well. And then we can do better in a few things. We can do better by constantly practicing doing better, and not being so hard on yourself when things don't go as well as you wanted them to go, but you don't give up, right? I remember when I first started my practice, I had 5 people and I was not making any money. And I was like, how am I going to keep doing this? And, God just told me to stay where you are. Don't move. Don't give up. And I was ready to give up, because I felt like I was doing all that I could. And I was overthinking, because I was so used to things not coming into my place. I was used to getting hurt by people and people not keeping their word. And I found myself overthinking the fact that I may fail. And it had nothing to do with me feeling I was going to fail and how people were going to look at me. It was more of I was going to fail and how would I feel about failing on something that I worked so hard for. And God told me to keep going, don't give up. And each time something negative happened, I want you to write it out. And that's what I did. I started writing out things that didn't go well, and I started thinking about what is it that I needed to do to fix it for the next time. And I started getting more word of mouth clients, right? I stopped being so uh, accommodating with my schedule, because having 5 clients, you just want to get people in, right? And God wanted me to be disciplined with the 5 people that I had. So I started, pretty much had like 1 or 2 people a day, just so I can, stay consistent. And once I started to stay consistent, God started to increase the people that were coming to see me, and I went from 5 people to 40 people. Now I'm over 100 people. And so I know for a fact that, we have to make sure that we're being consistent with anything and everything that we do. And when you're fearful with things, don't just scratch it. Don't talk negatively about yourself. Just keep going. Like Cindy said, break things down a little bit and do things one at a time instead of trying to make everything work, at once. I remember also when I first started my practice, I was also trying to get my faith series up, and I was working trying to get my faith series going. I was trying to get the practice going. I had all this stuff going on, and I'm like, what am I doing? And I had to put my faith series on hold. And it took 2 years before I could actually roll that back out. But guess what? When I took time and I put it to the side and I worked on myself and I worked on my business and I was consistent with one thing, God allowed me to revamp the faith series. And now the faith series is 6 months and it's virtual. And I was like, wow, like sometimes you do have to like pivot so that you don't give up and you don't feel like you're failing, but you might have to put something on the side or put it away or put it on hold for a minute so that it's like you don't lose hope and you don't stop moving to the next section. Again, I talked about setting realistic goals. We want to set realistic goals, not emotional ones. Just because you did well at a conversation or a conference, or you had a couple of people purchase some of your apparel, don't mean that you're gonna go out and make impulsive decisions and then now you're upset. Don't do anything emotional. Don't cut off somebody because they made you mad one day or they didn't keep their word one day. Really, really pay attention to setting realistic goals and having realistic expectations of others as well. Track your process, your progress weekly. Make sure that you are paying attention to like everything that you say you're going to do. Track it. Because the days or the weeks that you fall down or like it's not going as well as you thought it was going to go, then you can see what was going on. Okay, what was happening in week 2? Why did my progress go down? And you can say, okay, well, this happened, right? And so you could at least see what was going on, so you don't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not being productive. Give yourself grace, but no excuses. Like, you can give yourself grace, but doesn't mean that you can give excuses to yourself. Excuses is like, oh, I didn't do that because I was just this, like tired. I said I was tired by working out. That's an excuse. That's an excuse, because it was something that I really wanted to do. I wouldn't be tired. I would get up even if I'm tired and go ahead and do it. And so we have to understand that excuses are one thing, but grace is another. Grace is if you literally cannot get it done, give yourself grace and work harder or work better to get it done, or make another go at it. Replace overthinking with action. one thing I can do right now. So I had to find myself doing that. And one of the things that I do is when I start to overthink, I do jumping jacks or I do some type of physical activity. That helps me. I also turn off my phone. When I am overwhelmed, I'm overthinking, and I feel like it's about to roll into something that's bigger than it needs to be, I will turn off my phone in a minute. I'll get up, I'll do something fun. Also, I like to cook, so I will maybe make a big dinner or, go make something, find a new recipe or something like that, because I need to do something that's going to keep me from overthinking, so I become very active. I might even write out a new lesson plan or a new thing for my symposium, or jot down ideas for things that I want to do on my next podcast, or write down things that I want to do for my client. I might read a book, anything that's going to get me out of that space of overthinking. That's what I try to do, because overthinking can hurt us, guys. Oh, such and such didn't call me. They said they was gonna call me and let me know if I got the job, or they said they was gonna do this, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, that doesn't mean they're not gonna call you because they haven't called you yet. So instead of overthinking, do something productive with your time, right? Go in the yard, mow the lawn, go out and spend some time with your friends. But we have to get out of that overthinking, because overthinking will have us thinking that we're failing and putting things in our head that's not true. Build structure into your life. So again, budget, scheduling, work blocks, reflection time. Sometimes journaling is a really good time to put some structure. Journaling is really good because it allows you, again, to see what are some things that you need to work on and do better with. And then, I can't do anything without making sure that I leave you guys with some scripture. And so I have two scriptures today. One is my most favorite scripture, and it's 2 Timothy 1:7, and it says, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but power, love, and a sound mind. When I think about that, it's like we put ourselves in spaces where we will count ourselves out just because things are not going the way that we thought they should or the way we want them to. And so we will literally just put ourselves in a box and say, oh, I'm not going to even do this anymore. I'm not going to even try anymore because it keeps failing. And God is saying, I didn't give you that spirit of fear. I gave you a spirit of love and a spirit of sound mind. So you're supposed to be able to say, I have power. I can get it done. God loves me, so he has my back. And the last thing is, I have a sound mind. So whatever I put my mind to, and if it's for the power of God, is going to work out. And that's what I literally, like, that's why I love that scripture, because it has such a strong meaning to say, keep your head in the game. Keep your mind and your thoughts on God, because God does not give us fear. He gave us power. He gave us love, and he gave us a sound mind. And when you put all three of those things together, you can never fail. You can never fail. You just have to pivot sometime, because what God put up in here is so powerful, y'all. What he gave us in here is so powerful, but we just have to believe it, right? The second one is Proverbs 16:3. So we know that Proverbs 16:3 says, commit your work to the Lord and your plans will be established. Again, when you say you want to do something, why aren't you doing it? I'm going to tell you too, some of the reasons why you're not doing it is because you didn't go to God first. And so now you all confused. Now you out here doing things that you don't even know if you're really supposed to be doing it. because you didn't submit that to God. You didn't ask him. You didn't ask him for guidance. You didn't make sure that you were doing it for his glory. You just was out here doing it because everybody else was doing it. And now you wonder why things aren't going well. So it goes back to that question. You said you're going to do it. You're going to do better. So what's stopping you? A lot of times, things that are stopping us is that we're not bringing things to God. We are not establishing our businesses, our thoughts, our suggestions, our solutions. We're not doing any of that. We're not bringing any of that to God. We just keep saying we're going to do better. But there's no counsel with God. We're just counseling, or we're going to counsel from other people or ourselves. And then we wonder why it's failing. And so God says, commit your work to the Lord and your plans will be established. Again, your work. What are you doing? God, what am I doing? What do I have? You gave me this. So what am I supposed to do with it? And then God will give you the plan. Right? So when you say, God, like I have this voice. I have this voice. I have this platform. I have this. Now, what do I do with it? What do I do with it? And if you go there, then God will establish your plan. He will make your plan that, now that you have established, now that you've gone to him and you say, this is what I have, but I need to know what I want to do with it. And then he's going to give you the plan and then you're going to run with it. We think that everything is on us, but all of our gifts come from God. And so that's another reason why we cannot be fearful when we're doing things of God. And that's another reason why we can't keep saying we're going to do better on something without going to God first. So although I wanted you guys to understand that you have to stop being fearful, you got to stop procrastinating, you got to stop saying that you're going to do something and not doing it. Because if you continue to do that, then you're not going to fulfill your gift. And we all have gifts. So again, tonight's conversation is really about awareness, y'all. It's really about awareness. It's about once you see your part in things, then you can't unsee it. And you start working and doing better, right? And now the answers become, will you keep repeating it or will you start changing it? So will you keep repeating, I'm going to do better, but nothing happened? Or are you going to start changing things so that you can be better and things will happen? We're not going to be perfect, but we are going to be intentional. Because doing better isn't a moment. It's a decision that we make daily. We have to make these decisions daily on doing things better. So if we say we're going to do things better, do it. Be intentional about doing it. If you need help, call me, 860-656-9333. Make an appointment. Come to one of my events. Get on this. I have symposiums February, June, and October, right? I'm going to start the Chats in the Park for the women in June. That's coming back to Elizabeth Park. I have the podcast every Monday, 7 to 8. We always have discussions about different things. And this is an opportunity for you to be intentional about doing what's best for you and making sure things in your life go smoothly. Well, that's all I have for today. I hope that you guys have a wonderful Monday evening. Thank you for tuning in. It's your girl, Dr. Tasha Rose, your transparent sister in women's healing. And remember, I love you and God loves you too. Peace.